Welcome the anointed ones. Never test a quiet soul. They're the ones with heaven on speed dial. You see, when people can't read your spirit, they assume it's empty. But what they don't realize is silence in a chosen one isn't absence, it's loaded presence. And when someone decides to test that presence, oh, they're not starting a fight, they're triggering a spiritual war, they're nowhere near ranked to survive. Here's a chilling fact most people overlook. In ancient tribal systems, spiritual rank outweighed physical title. A village chief could be overruled by a barefoot elder who'd mastered the spirit realm. Now ask yourself, who are you in the room? The title holder or the spirit walker who doesn't need to speak to shake atmospheres? And just like that, someone who underestimated your aura, disrespected your path, or tried to measure your soul using worldly standards found themselves tangled in invisible consequences. They didn't just misjudge you, they walked straight into a test that exposed them instead. And here's the kicker, some of them still don't understand what hit them. They think it's bad luck. No, Karen, it's not Mercury retrograde. It's the repercussions of messing with the wrong frequency. So buckle up, because in this video we're about to uncover the brutal truth of what happens when unranked spirits tamper with consecrated ones. They thought you were average until the test proved otherwise. Let's get into it. Number 1. They mistook your meekness for lack of authority. They mistook your meekness for lack of authority. That's where they messed up. They saw your calm, your silence, your refusal to fight petty battles, and assumed you were weak. In their minds, someone who doesn't bark, doesn't bite. But what they failed to understand is that spiritual power isn't always loud. It doesn't need theatrics. It's not performative. You don't have to chant, shout, or wave your hands to have weight in the spirit. True rank walks in silently but shifts everything around it without effort. They thought they were testing your tolerance, but in reality, they were trespassing into sacred territory. And spiritual laws are not like human ones. You don't get warnings when you're dealing with someone who's been chosen and marked. You get consequences. They underestimated the realm backing you because you didn't flaunt it. You didn't need to. You knew who you were without needing to prove it. But they wanted to test it anyway. They wanted to see if the rumors, the aura, the feeling they got around you was just hype, or if there was something real behind it. So they pushed, they provoked, they gossiped, they disrespected you. They tried to shake what they didn't understand, and when nothing happened immediately, they thought you were powerless. But divine response isn't always instant, it's precise. What they activated wasn't your anger. It was a response from the spiritual realm that recognized their offense. And once that was in motion, they started to feel the shift. Things around them started falling apart. Their plans crumbled. Their peace left. Their energy drained. Suddenly everything felt off, and they couldn't trace it back to you because you never lifted a finger. That's when the fear set in. They realized the one they tested wasn't a regular person with an attitude. They tested someone with rank, someone backed by spiritual courts, ancestral warriors, and divine laws. You weren't passive, you were protected. You weren't ignoring them, you were being covered while the heavens handled it. They weren't dealing with someone who fights back. They were dealing with someone who doesn't have to. They didn't just misjudge your character, they misjudged your covering, and now they know the truth. You're not loud because power never has to announce itself. Number 2, their attacks activated a gate they couldn't close. The moment they tried to harm you, they activated something far beyond what they expected. They didn't just push your buttons, they triggered a gate in the spiritual realm that they had no power to shut once it opened. It's like they unknowingly pressed a divine emergency button, and what came through wasn't just protection, it was judgment. They thought they were just messing with you. They didn't realize you were spiritually sealed, and sealed souls are connected to realms that don't play about them. They assumed you were just another person they could manipulate or destroy behind closed doors. What they didn't realize was you had a spiritual covenant they couldn't see, one that came with serious consequences for anyone who crossed the line. And when they tested your spirit, they didn't just meet resistance. They triggered ancestral alarms, angelic responses, and divine order. You didn't need to defend yourself because heaven had already picked up the case before you said a word. That's when things started shifting in their lives, and they couldn't explain it. Relationships started crumbling, money stopped flowing, plans that used to succeed started collapsing for no reason. It wasn't a curse, it was the aftermath of violating spiritual protocol. They messed with someone chosen, someone covered. The gate they opened wasn't theirs to control, and they had no clue what they were up against. What they meant for harm became their own downfall, and you didn't even have to lift a hand. That's how rank works. See, spiritual rank doesn't brag, but it moves with force when tested. The protection over your life isn't passive, it's reactive. It waits silently until danger shows up, and then it responds without asking you for permission. They underestimated the cost of testing a consecrated soul. They thought you were just lucky or spiritually harmless. But the second they crossed that line, they were met with power that silences mouths, shuts doors, and exposes motives. Now they're dealing with consequences they can't reverse, and they're too ashamed to admit they caused it by targeting the wrong one. You didn't have to curse them, you just had to stay in alignment. The spiritual gate took care of the rest, and they learned the hard way that some doors, once opened, lead straight to divine correction. Number 3. They thought they could defame you until the realm intervened. They tried to destroy your name. That was their goal, to stain your reputation so badly that no one would look at you the same. They spread lies, twisted your words, exaggerated your flaws, and smiled while doing it. In their minds, they were building a story convincing enough to turn people against you. They thought that if they could control the narrative, they could control how the world viewed you. But what they didn't count on was how spiritually protected your name really is. You see, in the natural world, a name is just a label, but in the spiritual realm, a name holds weight. It carries history, purpose, rank, and identity, and your name isn't just a name, it's a legal authority sealed in heavenly archives. They tried to defame you, but every false accusation they made bounced back and began to rot their own credibility, because what they didn't realize is that every time they lied on you, they were actually testifying against themselves in the spirit. They didn't expect the realm to respond. They thought it would just be words, gossip, hearsay. But the truth is, when you speak against a consecrated soul, it doesn't just go into the air, it goes on record, and heaven listens. Every attempt to assassinate your character became evidence in a courtroom they didn't even know existed. So while they were busy talking, the realm was busy collecting. And once the balance tipped, everything started flipping on them. People started noticing inconsistencies in their stories. They got exposed in ways they couldn't control. Their own lives started unraveling, and still, you said nothing. You didn't clap back, didn't retaliate, didn't defend yourself online, because your spirit knew your name didn't need saving. It was already safeguarded. Your silence wasn't weakness. It was proof that your vindication was already being handled at a level they couldn't reach. Now they walk around confused, wondering why the smear campaign didn't work, why the people they tried to turn against you are now seeing them differently. The same mouth they used to destroy your name has now destroyed their own integrity. Because when someone tries to discredit a chosen one, they're not just fighting words, they're fighting a name that was spoken by God. And that's a fight they will always lose. Number 4. They underestimated the cost of provoking a consecrated soul. They underestimated the cost of provoking a consecrated soul. They thought you were just chosen. They did not know you were consecrated. There is a difference. Being chosen is a call, but being consecrated means you have already been set apart, processed, sealed, and appointed. It means your life is no longer your own. It means your assignment has already been written in spiritual law, and anyone who interferes with it is not just interfering with you, they are interfering with divine will. They assumed they were dealing with someone anointed, someone gifted, someone talented, but they were dealing with someone who was spiritually drafted into divine governance. You are not just walking in favor. You are walking in rank. Your actions carry weight in the unseen. Your words echo in courts they have never stood in. Your life is connected to blueprints they cannot even comprehend. So when they tried to sabotage, belittle, mock, or manipulate you, they weren't just being petty. They were stepping into a level of spiritual offense they were not prepared to handle. This was not just disrespect. This was spiritual treason. They did not know the covenant you carry. They did not know the price you paid in silence. They did not know the nights you wrestled with angels, the trials you endured, the deaths you died internally to become the soul you are today. You were not placed here by popularity or approval. You were placed here by divine instruction. And when someone attacks a consecrated vessel, they are not attacking a person, they are resisting God's agenda. Now they are confused. Things in their lives are shifting, closed doors, stagnation, loss, strange disruptions. They cannot trace it back to you because you never retaliated, but the realm recognized the violation, heaven heard the insult, and now they are paying for a war they started against someone they thought was ordinary. They did not know your positioning came with protection. They did not know your silence was not weakness but jurisdiction. They did not know that the consequences of provoking a consecrated soul are not symbolic. They are real, costly, and irreversible unless mercy intervenes. They tested you, and now they know. You are not just chosen, you are sealed. Number 5. They didn't expect your spirit to speak louder than their rituals. They didn't expect your spirit to speak louder than their rituals. They were confident in their systems, confident in their candles, symbols, chants, offerings, and spiritual contracts. They went deep into altars and dark practices, trying to manipulate energy against you. They joined forces with others. They whispered your name into smoke and shadows, thinking they could block, bind, delay, or destroy what was never theirs to touch in the first place. But what they didn't understand is this: your very existence is warfare. You don't need to fight the way they do. You are the disruption. They didn't realize that when someone walks in spiritual rank, they don't have to do anything for things to shift. You walk into a room and the atmosphere changes. You speak and invisible things begin to tremble. You pray once and it cancels 10 of their rituals combined. Why? Because your spirit doesn't borrow power. Your spirit is backed by the source of all power. And when they tried to go against you, they realized quickly they weren't just going up against a person. They were coming up against divine backing. They thought their rituals were strong. They thought their spells were hidden. But your spirit carries codes that confuse their frequencies, jam their signals, and override their assignments. Suddenly, the rituals didn't work. The hexes returned to sender. The alliances they formed turned on each other. Their energy drained and confusion hit their camp. And you didn't do anything but stay aligned, protected, and focused. That's when they began to fear you, not because you cursed them, but because nothing they did could touch you. You weren't even trying to fight. You were just existing. And your existence alone canceled the very systems they trusted. That is spiritual rank. It's not about how many books you've read or how many tools you can use. It's about what realm recognizes your name. And when you are truly chosen, truly sealed, your being speaks louder than any ritual they could ever perform. Now they're cautious, quiet. Some have backed away completely. Others are still confused, but deep down they know they tried everything. And none of it worked, because you're not spellbound, you're spell-proof. Number 6, their probes exposed them, not you. Their probes exposed them, not you. They came into your life acting curious, concerned, or observant, but behind the questions, the smiles, and the fake support was a quiet mission. They were trying to gather information, trying to pick you apart, looking for weakness, looking for proof that your spirit was not as pure as it seemed. They wanted to expose you, to find a flaw, a contradiction, a hidden fault they could use to bring you down. But what they did not realize was that in the process of watching you, they were being watched. As they investigated your soul, as they studied your patterns, they began to leak their own intentions. Their bitterness started to show, their jealousy slipped through the cracks. Their manipulation could not stay hidden. You were being tested, yes, but so were they. And where you moved with grace, they moved with ego. Where you stayed quiet, they plotted. Where you walked in truth, they operated in strategy and deception. What was meant to discredit you turned into a divine audit. A full scan of their own character was initiated, and they did not even know it. Every lie they spoke, every scheme they built, every false smile they wore became spiritual evidence, and one by one their masks began to fall. People started seeing through the performance. Their alliances began to fall apart. Their stories began to contradict. Their hands began to show, and it became clear they were never genuine. They thought they were playing chess, but they walked straight into a mirror that did not reflect you. It reflected them. The more they tried to expose your heart, the more their own corruption was laid bare. They thought you were hiding something dark, but the only darkness revealed was their own. You passed the test, not by being perfect, but by being real. And they failed, not because you exposed them, but because truth always reveals itself. In the end, the only thing their probing revealed was how much they could not stand your light. And that was never your weakness. That was their confession. Number 7, your restraint was mistaken for powerlessness. Your restraint was mistaken for powerlessness. They assumed because you did not clap back, you could not. They thought your silence meant surrender. They took your patience as proof that you had no power, no voice, no defense. But what they failed to understand is that spiritual rank knows when to move, and more importantly, when not to. You were never scared. You were never unsure. You were simply aligned. And alignment means you do not answer every insult or respond to every attack. You were not being passive. You were being strategic. They pushed you. They poked. They said things they thought would get a reaction, but all they got was silence, calm, stillness. And that unnerved them more than any outburst would have. They wanted drama. They wanted to pull you into a mess, to make you lose your dignity. They wanted you to fight like them, to get down in the mud. But you were built different. You knew that to respond would be to step out of position. And the moment you step out of position, you step out of protection. So you stayed quiet, you stayed in posture, and they took it as weakness. But what they did not realize was that you were not letting them win. You were letting them dig their own hole. Every word they spoke in arrogance was building the very judgment they would later face. Every scheme they set up was setting them up, and while they laughed at you, heaven was recording everything. You knew something they didn't. Vengeance is not your job. Vindication is. And the moment you let go, the moment you truly released it and handed it over to God, the shift began. Things in their lives started falling apart. Opportunities dried up. Peace vanished. Confusion increased. They did not link it to what they had done to you because they were too focused on what they thought you couldn't do. But it was never about what you would do. It was about what would be done for you. Now they are starting to understand. You didn't stay quiet because you were powerless. You stayed quiet because the battle wasn't yours. And when the heavens take over, they fight in ways no human ever could. Number 8, they felt nothing physically, but everything spiritually. They felt nothing physically, but everything spiritually. They looked you in the face and smirked. They made jokes behind your back. They felt bold, untouchable. They said what they wanted, did what they wanted, and expected no consequence. On the outside, it looked like nothing happened. No fire fell from the sky, no dramatic collapse. Just silence, stillness, as if their actions went unchecked. But the real response didn't show up in the physical. It showed up where they were most unprepared, the spiritual. At first it was subtle, sleepless nights, uneasy feelings, energy that would not settle. Then it got heavier. Nightmares, sudden fear, a sense of being watched, shadows that wouldn't go away. They tried to brush it off, blaming stress or coincidence. But deep down they knew something shifted. Something followed them home. Something entered the room when they left yours. They could not explain it, but they could feel it. And that feeling became their silent torment. They tested your spirit without knowing what your spirit carried. They assumed you were ordinary. They treated you like a joke. But what they touched was sacred. What they disrespected was protected. And spiritual protection doesn't respond with noise. It responds with precision. When they mocked you, they activated consequences, not visible ones. Not ones they could post online, but consequences that pulled at their peace, stripped their energy, and haunted their minds. Some of them began to withdraw. Others became hostile for no reason, trying to project their guilt onto you. But the truth was they were unraveling. Not because of you, but because of what touched them after they touched you. You didn't have to speak a word. You didn't have to defend yourself. Your spirit was enough. The presence you carry carries its own reaction, and once it's triggered, it doesn't stop until the lesson is learned. Now they walk carefully. They watch what they say. Some avoid you completely. Not out of hate, but out of fear, not of you, but of the spiritual consequences they now understand too well. They felt brave in public, but when they got home, something else met them. And that's when they realized testing a protected soul leaves marks no one can see, but they can feel every single one of them. Number 9, they discovered too late that your spirit has diplomatic immunity. They discovered too late that your spirit has diplomatic immunity. They tried everything they knew, curses, gossip, manipulation, subtle sabotage. They plotted behind the scenes, expecting to see you break. But no matter what they did, it never landed. Their words didn't stick. Their energy couldn't penetrate. Their efforts kept falling flat. And at first they were confused. They thought you were just lucky or maybe unaware of the attacks. But as time passed and nothing worked, they started to realize they were dealing with something beyond them. That is when it hit them. You are not just spiritually protected. You are spiritually untouchable. You operate under divine law. You walk with clearance. You have diplomatic immunity in realms they don't even know exist. There are spiritual guards assigned to your life. There are covenants surrounding your destiny. You're exempt from the chaos they tried to send your way, not because you are perfect, but because you are purpose-filled. And your purpose is guarded by something much greater than you. They cursed you and watched their own lives spiral. They tried to block you and saw their own progress stall. They touched your name with filth and were shocked when theirs got dragged through mud. They were baffled, even scared, when everything they sent out started boomeranging. They thought they had the upper hand, but what they didn't know was that your name is marked in the spirit as do not touch. This is not superstition, it is law, spiritual law. When someone is truly chosen and consecrated, they are placed under a covering that cannot be accessed by ordinary means. Your favor is not just favor, it is legal protection. You carry the seal of someone who belongs to a different kingdom. You are not under the same spiritual jurisdiction as those who operate in darkness. You walk with angels. You move with light. You are backed by authority they will never understand. Now they are quiet. Some of them are apologetic without saying a word. Others are distant. They know something now. They know you are different. And the worst part for them, they learned it the hard way. Because by the time they discovered your spirit had immunity, the consequences of violating that immunity were already in motion. Number 10, their plans died at the gate of your name. Their plans died at the gate of your name. They spent time crafting strategies. They made phone calls. They formed alliances. They laid out step by step how they were going to block you, ruin you, stop you. Some of them fasted with wicked intentions. Some of them paid spiritual workers to interfere with your path. Others just used their words and influence to try and shut you down. But when it came time to actually release their plan, something strange happened. They hit a wall. What they did not know is that your name is not just a label. In the spiritual realm, your name is a gate. It is coded. It is sealed. It is guarded. And if someone tries to speak your name with wicked intent, it does not carry the same effect. They tried. Some could not say it at all. Others started feeling sick or choked up when they mentioned you in spiritual rituals. The energy would not respond. The spirits they called on would not act. Because your name is encrypted in a way that only those with permission can touch it. That is when confusion started to set in. They had done this before with others and seen results. But with you, nothing moved. Doors stayed shut. Attacks would not launch, and when they tried to press harder, things started turning against them. Their health declined, their relationships broke down, their peace disappeared. The very spirits they summoned for help turned hostile. Because spiritual rank changes everything, and you are not open access. Your name has spiritual security clearance. It is surrounded by authority. It is tied to assignments and promises that have already been written and sealed. Anyone trying to interfere is treated as a trespasser, not just by you, but by forces higher than you. They thought they could say your name like they said everyone else's. But your name carries weight. It carries fire. It carries recognition in realms they are not welcome in. So their plans crumbled. Their maps became useless. Their attacks returned to sender before they even launched. Because your name is not a doorway to destruction, it is a fortress, and without permission no one is getting through, not in the natural, not in the spirit, not at all. Number 11. They mistook divine timing for delay until the earth shifted. They mistook divine timing for delay until the earth shifted. They looked at your life and saw stillness, and they called it failure. They watched you move slowly, and they labeled it laziness. They saw you waiting, praying, growing in silence, and they assumed you had missed your moment. They thought you were falling behind. They measured your life against their timelines and decided you were not going anywhere. But what they did not see was the blueprint behind the quiet. You were not stagnant. You were being positioned. Every seeming pause in your journey was a setup for something precise, something heavy, something prepared beyond human understanding. While they were rushing to show results, you were being aligned with divine outcomes. Your path was not meant to impress crowds, it was designed to shift atmospheres. And because that kind of movement requires precision, heaven took its time with you. They laughed, they judged. Some even offered you pity. But what they did not understand was that divine timing does not follow human logic. God was building you in silence, layer by layer, strengthening your character, burning off your ego, equipping you with wisdom, aligning people, places, and events to meet you exactly when it was time. Nothing was late, nothing was missed. It was all orchestrated, and then it happened. The shift, the rise, the doors opened, not one by one, but all at once. And it was not just elevation, it was impact. When you stepped into your moment, everything around you responded. People felt it, environments changed, opportunities multiplied. The energy shifted. You did not just rise, you caused a ripple effect that shook the space you entered. Because you were not just waiting for a breakthrough, you were becoming the breakthrough. Now they are quiet, some are confused, others are convicted. Because the one they thought would stay hidden just became the one everyone is watching. You did not arrive late, you arrived fully formed. And that is the power of divine timing. It may take longer, but when it happens, nothing stays the same. They thought you were behind, but really, you were being prepared to move the earth. Number 12, your ancestral rank silenced their altars. Your ancestral rank silenced their altars. They were confident in their spiritual tools, confident in their rituals, in their sacrifices, in the altars they had raised to gain access to hidden power. They believed they could stir up forces against you the way they had done with others. They thought they could summon spirits to block your path, weaken your energy, or cloud your destiny. But what they did not expect was that the moment your name was spoken in those places, everything stopped. They didn't understand who they were dealing with. They saw you and assumed you were standing alone. But your bloodline is not ordinary. You were born into a lineage of spiritual authority. Not everyone in your family carried it well, but someone in your line paid a heavy price to preserve it. Prayers, sacrifices, obedience, and unshakable devotion to God were planted generations ago, and you are the living harvest. So when they tried to use their altars against you, they weren't just fighting your present, they were confronting the spiritual rank of your entire lineage. The moment your name reached their altars, things went cold, responses ceased. What used to work suddenly became ineffective. The spirits they called on would not move. Some even turned on them. That's because your ancestors who walk in light, those who made covenant with the Most High, stepped in and declared, "Not this one." They did not just protect you, they shut the operation down completely. You didn't even have to know it was happening. You were living your life, focused on purpose, unaware of the spiritual war being fought in places you never entered. Because you weren't the one doing the fighting, you were the reason for it. You are the chosen continuation of a bloodline that carries authority in the spirit. And when someone tries to war against you without clearance, they find themselves silenced by forces they cannot name. Now they are stunned, they are quiet. Some have even gone into hiding because they touched something holy and got burned by a history they never took the time to learn. You didn't show up to the battle alone, you brought legions, you brought legacy. And that legacy knows how to protect its own. Number 13, they called it ego, but it was rank speaking. They called it ego, but it was rank speaking. Every time you set a boundary, they rolled their eyes. Every time you said no, they labeled you difficult. When you pulled back from drama or walked away from disrespect, they swore you thought you were better than everyone else. But the truth is, it was never pride. It was never arrogance. What they were witnessing was your spirit operating in its rightful authority. You were not reacting with attitude. You were responding from alignment. They could not handle the fact that you were no longer available in the ways they expected. They wanted your access, not your honor. And when they could no longer manipulate, mock, or mishandle you, they had to call it something to protect their ego, so they called it ego. But they were never dealing with arrogance. They were dealing with someone who had remembered who they were, someone who had graduated from needing to be accepted by people who were never assigned to their destiny. What looked like distance was protection. What looked like silence was discernment. What looked like indifference was wisdom. You were not just walking away, you were obeying spiritual instructions. Because when you carry spiritual rank, there are rooms you cannot sit in, conversations you cannot stay in, and atmospheres you are not allowed to entertain. It is not about thinking you are better, it is about knowing you are responsible. And responsibility demands separation. Your spirit refused to be democratized. You are not going to let yourself be handled any kind of way just to make others feel comfortable. That is not pride. That is spiritual maturity. You do not have to shrink for people to like you. You do not have to break yourself into pieces to be included. You know the value of your energy, your time, your presence, and anyone who cannot respect that is not ready for what you carry. Now they are watching you from a distance, still trying to figure out what changed. But nothing changed. You just stopped participating in cycles that disrespected your spirit. They thought you were being proud, but all along you were just being precise. Because spiritual rank does not apologize for operating in truth. Number 14. They didn't know testing you was a test for them. They didn't know testing you was a test for them. To them, it felt like they were in control, pulling strings, setting traps, watching you closely to see how you would react. They thought they were evaluating you, judging your character, poking at your peace to see if you'd crack. But what they didn't understand is that they were never the ones doing the testing. They were the ones being tested. Every lie they told, every setup they orchestrated, every little moment of cruelty wasn't just happening in the dark. It was being recorded in plain view of the spiritual realm. You were the subject, but not in the way they thought. You were the light that revealed what was hiding inside them. You didn't fight back. You didn't stoop to their level. You didn't respond with hate. And that is what sealed your passing grade. You remained in alignment. You trusted the process. You allowed your restraint, your silence, your integrity to speak on your behalf. That's not weakness. That's discipline. And discipline in spiritual terms always brings reward. But they failed. And not because you exposed them, because they exposed themselves. The very moment they chose deceit over truth, envy over love, sabotage over sincerity, they revealed who they were. The test was never about how strong you were, it was about how real they were. And when they saw that you wouldn't fold, wouldn't retaliate, wouldn't lose yourself, it made them uncomfortable. Because your stability revealed their instability. Your authenticity exposed their pretense, and now heaven has taken note. The test is over, the results are in. Justice is in motion, not out of revenge, but out of order. Divine law does not ignore the mistreatment of a consecrated soul. What they thought was a harmless game was actually an audit of their spirit. And the moment they made their choices, the scales started tipping. Now doors are closing for them. Truth is surfacing. Hidden intentions are coming to light. You passed not by being perfect, but by being faithful. They failed not by accident, but by decision. And while they thought they were proving something about you, all they did was prove something about themselves. In the end, the test was never really yours. It was theirs all along. They thought they were testing your strength, your patience, your faith. What they didn't realize is they were actually testing the very forces assigned to protect you. Every insult, every scheme, every spiritual attempt to bring you down was not just seen, it was documented in realms where truth cannot be twisted and justice cannot be delayed. You were never the fool, you were the mirror. And as they stared into your life trying to find flaws, all they found was the reflection of their own unhealed nature. Your restraint, your silence, your elevation, none of it was weakness, it was wisdom, it was proof of your spiritual rank. Because when you are truly chosen, truly consecrated, you don't need to fight back. You don't need to explain, defend, or retaliate. The realm you belong to does not allow dishonor to go unchecked. Your spirit is backed by something ancient, powerful, and holy. And those who dare test it learn quickly that the consequences are not symbolic, they are real, sudden, and irreversible. Now they know you weren't the one to play with. You weren't confused. You were covered. You weren't passive. You were positioned. You weren't delayed. You were divinely timed. And as the dust settles, one thing is clear. The test they designed for you became their own exposure. And your endurance, that became your elevation. So stand tall, chosen one, not just because you passed the test, but because you were the test. And heaven has already ruled in your favor. If this message spoke to your spirit, if you felt seen, heard, and divinely confirmed, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that subscribe button and become part of a community that moves with revelation, not repetition. Like the video to push this truth through the algorithm, comment below and let us know which part hit you the hardest. And share this with someone who needs to know they are not crazy, they are consecrated. This channel isn't for the crowd, it's for the called. And if you're here, you're not here by accident. Stay plugged in. Your spirit deserves content that reminds you who you are. Welcome home, chosen one. Your seat at the table is ready. God bless you.